This is Twit.
A picture published by Dave Zatz on a website called Zatz Not Funny, see what he did there, claims that it's a controller for an upcoming Amazon game console. The leak, if accurate, bolsters rumors that Amazon will soon ship a set-top box that also runs games. Joining us to talk about the prospects of an Amazon game console is Mike Futter, the news editor for Game Information magazine and the guy who broke the Amazon game console story back in August. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, Mike?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Wonderful. Can you tell us briefly about what we know at this point about a possible Amazon game system?
When we broke the story back in August, we got a tip, followed it up with a number of different sources, and independently heard from all of them that this is going to be an Android-based console, that it was going to have its own controller, which, if you know, the pictures today seem to support. And that they were going to be making a big push into the gaming industry. And there's been a number of things that have happened along the way that have supported that. Most significantly, in February, they purchased a developer by the name of Double Helix. Double Helix worked with Microsoft on the Killer Instinct reboot, and most recently they worked with Capcom to reboot a series called Strider, and that appeared on both new generation consoles. It appeared on last gen Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and also PC. So, you know, all the evidence continues to mount that Amazon is looking to make a push, and the information that we've seen suggests a set-top box, although I'm not entirely sure that it's going to end there. When we originally broke the story, we talked about, you know, Amazon does a huge amount of business in the consumer electronics world and has strong relationships with manufacturers. And therefore, there could be some partnerships to be struck between Amazon and whatever technology it's developing and those manufacturers for some baked-in features.
Now, as a gaming writer, does it seem likely that Amazon could compete against the likes of Microsoft, Sony, Google, and others?
Well, you know, Amazon has a lot of money. They've got a lot of resources. I think the skepticism that exists in the core gaming industry right now, or the core gaming consumer market, is that there hasn't been a successful Android console yet. Ouya was the kind of the biggest that we had heard of. It had a huge Kickstarter push and has since pretty much fizzled out. They've now are pushing into kind of a platform on other devices. Mad Catz has a device. NVIDIA has the Shield, which has a following largely because of the ability to stream from desktop and laptop PCs that have NVIDIA cards in them. So it has that additional functionality that the others don't have. And then there's GameStick and others. So I think that there is a skepticism about Android as a primary gaming device, despite its success in gaming as, you know, for phones and for tablets. But as a core gaming device, I think there is some healthy skepticism in the market.
So, Mike, with this particular device, it's also been rumored that this is going to be a streaming box for them for video for their Amazon On Demand, that it might have Netflix and Hulu as well on it. And right now, you know, you have Roku, which has casual games on it, and they're not great, but they're there. Do you see this device maybe as being more pushed as a entertainment box, or as opposed to a gaming box, and gaming is secondary?
I think that's entirely possible. I mean, we need to remember that Amazon does have an ecosystem already. They have their Kindle line, and they have their own versions of apps that are designed for that, and largely casual apps like Angry Birds. You know, they do have a healthy video streaming service. I thought that yesterday's news about AppStream and the software development kit becoming available was particularly interesting. And one of the things that I noticed about that was in their animated demo that was on the website is they showed what looked to be a first-person shooter. But if you go look at the frequently asked questions, they're actually really clear that first-person shooters, head-to-head fighting games, things that require very low latency aren't going to be a great fit for that. However, that they talked about that there might be a split, so streaming some of the content, but also keeping some of it locally. Given the media buttons on the controller, I think a streaming box makes a lot of sense. Those definitely stand out, and you can see them right there on the bottom. Those definitely jumped out at me. But the controller itself looks kind of bulky. It looks very similar to the Xbox 360 design with the offset controllers, the button labeling. Microsoft, though, spent $100 million on designing the Xbox One controller. I think just from looking at this, that this takes a lot of cues from OnLive's controller. And OnLive has tried to make a go at cloud-based gaming and streaming the video to a variety of devices. They had their share of financial problems and have recently reemerged. But if you look at that controller, there's a lot of similarities, the exception being that the OnLive controller has the parallel sticks versus the offset sticks. So it looks like they could be going for something similar with the media buttons.
Now, Mike, if you sort of imagine that they will use a similar strategy that they did for Kindle, that would mean they would use a forked version of Android. They would try to keep people off Google's games and in place of their own, and get people and sort of direct people to their own game store, and they would also probably subsidize it. When the Kindles first came out, they were losing lots of money on every single tablet, and the reason was that it's essentially a cash register for buying things on Amazon, and this game system could be another cash register. So let's just imagine, taking this to its logical conclusion, that their gaming system was significantly less expensive. Let's say it's $79 to buy it or something like that. Would this influence the public to choose this game system over others, or this television streaming box, or whatever it's going to be, over others? Is price a big deal? I mean, we've seen the difference between Xbox and PlayStation, and recent reports with the Xbox One sales indicate that its higher price is not a big deal. What do you think?
I think you're right, and I think yesterday's NPD report backs that up. They last month. So looking at the January NPD report, there were about twice as many PlayStation 4 sold as Xbox One units. Last month, that gap drastically narrowed. So there were about over 90% of the PlayStation 4 number sold of Xbox Ones. So that gap is really narrowing, and the price difference is becoming less of an issue than people originally thought. When they were both announced, I think people thought that $100 difference was going to be kind of a big deal. But I also want to point out that most, if not, with the exception of a few in recent history, most consoles are subsidized. They are sold as loss leaders, and then the money is made up on the software and software licensing. So for Amazon to undercut drastically, and even undercut some of the other Android consoles that are out there, I totally see that as possible, and they've got the wherewithal to do that. They have been very successful with the Kindle line. They do understand how to pilot a piece of hardware and then bring people into their own store. So I think the scenario that you laid out makes a lot of sense and seems to be the way that they would go.
Although, they're coming in at a time when I suspect that Apple also is going to introduce a version of Apple TV that has games, although the rumors are now that that'll come mid-year at the announcement, but you won't be able to buy it till the end of the year. Right now it is a fairly mature market for gaming consoles, given the fact that this device probably won't be able to run Google's Android games or Google's Android apps. Is it too late even for somebody with Amazon's marketing muscle to come in and make a serious dent, particularly to win the hearts and minds of developers who are already kind of scattered?
I think one of the biggest problems with development for Android is the fragmentation, and I think that the further you fragment, the harder it is for developers, which is where that app stream comes in. Yesterday, Amazon really pushed the whole idea of you've got this one centralized version, and then you update that, and it pushes out to all the other devices. So if they're going to be tying those two together, then it's attractive for developers because they have to test against less versions or fewer versions. So, I mean, the market is mature, but the mobile push taught us anything is that there is still new audience out there and there's still a market for these. And anybody who has a Kindle already and is part of that ecosystem, my guess is those apps are gonna port over. We've seen a controller if it's a set-top box, and AppStream is also about streaming other kinds of apps, not just games. Then a wireless keyboard that uses Bluetooth or a wireless mouse could also be used for it.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on, and I also want to thank you for canceling your meeting in order to be here. Apologies to whomever you canceled on.
It's okay. They will forgive me, I think.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks again. Well, you can find Mike's work on GameInformer.com, and you can find him on Twitter at Futterish, Futterish.